Okay guys, East Tactic here. Really crazy setup. I don't know what prompted me to do this. I just happened to have a set of 4 new springs and I just got to thinking, you know what, I'm really curious. And so, as you can see, I've doubled up on the springs. I have double springs on my front shocks and my rear shocks. The Techno Oranges are both in the front here, so I bought 4 Techno Orange springs. My original plan, and it's still my plan, was to put 1 new spring on all 4 of my shocks. Even though the back end shocks are longer, I probably, these are 80 millimeters, even though you can't see the 8 there because I got ripped off, but these are 80 millimeters, so I bought 4 of the 80 millimeters. Mostly because the 90 millimeter shock has a 4-pound, and I wanted 6 pounds on all 4. I just wanted to maximize. Anyway, so I got all 4 of these springs in, and I decided to do something crazy, and I put 2 springs on the front, 2 springs, and 2 springs on each one. The only reason why I would say this is a bad idea is because you can kind of hear the springs rubbing against the threads because it's not designed for that. And the threads are eventually going to wear out, and it's probably over time going to wear on either the springs or the threads. But hey, call me crazy. So I took it out to the jump ramp, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with how well it was performing. I hit my ramp more than a couple of times. The performance that was happening with the shocks, the way I have them set up, they're still set up with the stock oil, they're still set up with the stock pistons. I did screw these things up to the near the top on all 4 of them because, I mean, man, you know, I've got 2 springs on each of these, and so trying to squeeze this thing down more would be really difficult. However, the last thing I do want to test with this, let's just call it experimental shock setup with these double springs, is to screw these ring all the way down. They're maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch on all 4 of them, and then do the drop test on it and see, you know, if it increases by X amount of inches or whatever. And then also hit the ramp a couple of times with these rings screwed down farther, and if I'm still getting no bounce, I'll have documented the fill of this setup. So I'm going to go ahead and screw these things down. It's going to be a lot more difficult to screw these down. It's going to hurt my fingers quite a bit. I might end up getting a wrench to do this because there's so much pressure with these 2 springs that it's just difficult. So, and then when I'm done, I'll come back and we'll do a quick drop test on it to see just how much, you know, dual springs on every shock and these rings screwed lower impacts drop distance. I went about a little over halfway on the front ones. We'll test that out first. See if any kind of difference is made on the drop. So it's a little bit later in the day today, so you'll probably notice a lighting shift, but let's check this out. So I've got my ruler again, and oh, that is significantly stiffer. I could just tell by that drop. Are we going to experience a lot of bounce, though, is the question. One of the nice things that I will say about having these screwed down a lot farther is there's less area on the actual red portion of the shock for these to bind up on, so you don't hear that binding at all, which is nice. But man, these things are stiff. So, I mean, way stiffer. Okay, let me do our first drop. So we're gonna go at about 20 inches. I think the back ones are actually stiffer than the front ones right now. You'll notice when I push it down, the front end's going down. So I feel like I either need to bring these back up, because the back end you want to be like slightly less stiff as the front, or continue going down and getting these down to the closer to the end of the threads. So I'm gonna take my wrench to this right now and get it down farther, and we're just gonna put these things up to like literally the maximum stiffness that you can probably get with these shocks. And then we're gonna do a test run with it, just out of plain crazy curiosity. I might even like this, and if I do and I don't break things, I'll be sure to report the news. However, if I start breaking, you know, shock rod ends, or if I start breaking other components because these shocks are so stiff, then it won't be worth it. Obviously, chassis slap is part of the game, and me trying to abolish that is playing with fire, perhaps. But I don't know of anybody else that's done this test, and so why not be a trailblazer and do it myself? So we're gonna tighten those all the way back down to, from here down to about there, and the front end is gonna be just as stiff as the back. We'll see what happens. I'll be right back. Guys, I am back. So I pushed these suckers down to fairly close. I believe that the actual springs are covering up about the same amount of threading that's still left on it, and the same with this in the back. So now when I push down on it, it's a little even. It's a little more even. The front might be a little bit more, but I also noticed that this thing is in the center more, so if I were to be pushing right here, it's about even. They are way stiff, way stiff. You see that definitely a lot of bounce, but is that bounce actually gonna translate into like popping up off the ground? I don't know. Let's go jump it and find out.